Did you know that 60 million years ago, a serpent over 46 feet long slithered across the face of the Earth? Not a myth, not a legend, a real creature, so massive that a grown man could stand upright inside its open jaws. The story of Earth is written in blood, bone, and ash. It's a chronicle of empires that rose from mud, only to vanish beneath layers of stone. Life has colonized every corner of this planet, from mountain peaks that pierce the clouds to ocean trenches where sunlight has never reached. And through it all, one truth has remained constant: evolution is merciless. Biodiversity doesn't ask permission. It conquers, it adapts, it transforms. The mechanism is brutally simple: genetic variation within populations shaped by the unforgiving conditions of their environment. Survival of the fittest isn't a philosophy, it's physics. This is how certain lizards evolved into serpents. This is how those serpents, which began modestly sized, grew to lengths exceeding 30 feet before vanishing from existence entirely. The adventure of the first snakes began during the Mesozoic era, a geological period bookended by two catastrophic biological crises. It started 251 million years ago after the Permian extinction wiped the slate clean. It ended 65.5 million years ago with another apocalypse that triggered mass annihilation. The Mesozoic lasted over 185 million years. During this time, Pangaea, the supercontinent, tore itself apart, giving birth to the Atlantic Ocean. The result was violent volcanic activity along oceanic ridges and hotspots. Carbon dioxide flooded the atmosphere. A runaway greenhouse effect took hold. The climate became warm, almost tropical. These conditions made the Mesozoic especially favorable for life. Reptiles developed and diversified extraordinarily. Marine reptiles, the first dinosaurs, flying reptiles, birds and mammals made their debut. In the oceans, cephalopod mollusks like belemnites and ammonites dominated the waters. Flora exploded in this near-tropical paradise. Gymnosperms and then angiosperms, flowering plants, progressively replaced ferns. But one category has been criminally overlooked: serpents. Alongside the evolution of dinosaurs, snakes demonstrated a capacity for adaptation that borders on supernatural. Some grew to sizes so immense they could crush a crocodile without effort, lengths reaching 46 feet, weights exceeding 2,500 pounds. If snakes inspire fascination and fear today, imagine encountering these giants. The most famous? Titanoboa. But how did these serpents evolve from their reptilian ancestors? How did they develop the morphological attributes that define them? And how did they achieve sizes so exceptional that giant feels inadequate? Today, we embark on a journey through deep time to discover the golden age of giant serpents. But before we descend into the abyss of the past, there's something you need to understand about what made these creatures possible and what ultimately condemned them to extinction. To the general public, snakes are simply cold-blooded animals without legs, often associated with venom. But beneath this simplistic view lies one of evolution's most fascinating success stories. Snakes are characterized by extreme body elongation, uniform vertebrae and ribs, and the complete absence of limbs. Their skin is anything but ordinary, covered in keratinized scales. Their eyelids are fused and transparent, forming a protective spectacle over each eye. They are formidable predators. But snakes weren't always this way. The origin story of serpents traces back to the end of the Paleozoic era, approximately 340 million years ago. It developed during the Secondary era, when many groups went extinct. While giant reptiles like the famous dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and plesiosaurs failed to survive, snakes endured. In fact, they thrived. Today, there are roughly 3,500 species of snakes. By comparison, crocodilians number around 20, turtles about 350. Snakes have conquered an astonishing variety of environments: deserts, marine habitats, forests, every continent except Antarctica. Their form and locomotor adaptations make them highly specialized reptiles. Could their success be attributed to the loss of their limbs? Possibly. Losing legs allowed them to move through vastly different environments. But that's not the only reason. The evolution of their cranial skeleton allowed them to capture extremely large prey. The acquisition of a venomous apparatus provided a significant advantage. It's in all these improvements where we find the reason for their evolutionary dominance. One of the oldest fossils attributable to reptiles was found over 300 million years ago. This small animal, about 8 inches long, possessed an anapsid skull, a feature found today in turtles. Anapsids gave rise to two main groups, synapsids and diapsids. Synapsids eventually led to mammals. Among diapsids, we find the ancestors of snakes. The oldest known diapsid is approximately 300 million years old, Petrolosaurus canzensis. It measured 16 inches, certainly terrestrial and insectivorous. This small lizard lived at the end of the Carboniferous period, when Earth's atmosphere was oxygen-rich, forests were lush, and giant predators feasted on small insects in the vegetation. But it was also prey. Petrolosaurus had to contend with predators like Meganeura, a giant dragonfly with a wingspan of 28 inches, and Arthropleura, a millipede-like creature that could reach lengths of 6.5 feet. Later, diapsids split into two major groups, archosauromorphs and lepidosauromorphs. The first group included dinosaurs and pterosaurs. Today, only crocodiles and birds remain. Lepidosauromorphs included plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and other aquatic animals, as well as modern lepidosaurs, sphenodontids, lizards, amphisbaenians, and serpents. These last three groups are the most closely related and constitute the squamates. Lizard morphology is highly varied. Some have 4 legs and long tails. Others have elongated bodies and no legs at all. What all lizards share is the loss of the lower temporal arch of the skull. Amphisbaenians are burrowing animals, resembling snakes. They have a ringed appearance thanks to skin grooves and look like giant earthworms. Except for one species, amphisbaenians lack limbs and temporal arches. Snakes have lost both arches. They have highly elongated bodies and lack limbs. Their eyes have no movable eyelids. Unlike amphisbaenians, snakes don't have an externally ringed appearance. They more closely resemble certain lizards. Snakes originated from the family of lizards. But which lizards? Certain groups of squamates are believed to be close relatives or ancestors of snakes. Since snakes have existed in fossil form for millions of years, their lineage isn't found in any current group of squamates. We must find the group that shares the same fossil ancestor with snakes. It's been suggested that amphisbaenians are snakes' closest relatives among serpentiform squamates. However, due to their extremely complex anatomical specializations, herpetologists have refuted this hypothesis. Among groups of lizards that possess limbs, 2 have been suggested as possible ancestors: varanoids and syncomorphs. Varanoids include monitor lizards, Heloderma, venomous lizards, and a very rare lizard called Lanthonitis, which lives in Sarawak on the island of Borneo. Their morphological characteristics, skull structure, tongue, jaw, and tooth replacement, suggest they may be directly related to snakes. Varanoids also include entirely fossil groups. Mosasaurs of the late Cretaceous were large marine varanoids, reaching 33 feet in length. Their limbs transformed into flippers like those of dolphins. Dolichosaurides and Aegialosaurides, also marine varanoids from the Cretaceous, appear close to the origin of snakes. All these animals share well-developed legs, which differentiate them from snakes. But other marine fossils from the Cretaceous revealed organisms clearly resembling snakes. Among them, Pachyophis and Pachyrachus, intermediates between varanoids and snakes. Some scientists even classify them as snakes, and that's when the mystery deepens, because these creatures lived in water, not on land, not underground, in water, which raises a question that will shatter everything we thought we knew about how snakes lost their legs. Pachyophis is a genus of snake that existed at the end of the Cretaceous period. It belongs to the family Simileophidae, a family with limbs and a pelvic girdle. Pachyophis measured around 3 feet long. It had a flattened morphology and pachyostosis, a non-pathological condition where bones thicken abnormally. Its skull was slender and pointed. The jawbones resembled those of lizards more than snakes, but its teeth unmistakably serpentine. They were set in sockets, alveoli buried in the jaw, and present throughout the entire mandible. The presence of backward-pointing teeth indicates a carnivorous diet and a grasping action rather than a biting one. The structure of its jaw allowed it to grab and swallow simultaneously. It fed on soft, relatively small, slippery prey, like marine worms. The articulation of its vertebrae was very similar to a snake's, but the construction of the vertebrae themselves differed. Pachyophis lived in shallow aquatic marine regions. It moved using horizontal undulating movements of its body. Its neck was more flexible, indicating it could perform vertical movements, like keeping its head above its flat posture, a common stance for an animal living in shallow water. Then there's Pachyrachus, meaning ancient serpent. The skull of Pachyrachus shows most of the derived traits of modern snakes. Its body was slender and elongated. It was a slow swimmer, an ambush predator rather than a pursuit hunter. Its narrow head and neck allowed it to reduce water resistance, but it also enabled feeding in burrows or narrow crevices. Other candidates for the title of snake ancestor are syncomorphs. These include a large number of four-legged lizards, but also some snake-like species. Some herpetologists have speculated they share a common ancestor with snakes because brain structure is similar, but fossil studies haven't confirmed this hypothesis. Another possible relationship has been suggested between snakes and pigopodids in the Australian region. They have highly elongated bodies, no forelimbs, and highly reduced hind limbs. But this hypothesis has been refuted. Now it's accepted that snakes descend from lizards. Scientists search for their closest cousins among modern varanoids. But one critical question remains unanswered. How did lizards give rise to snakes? 3 hypotheses have been proposed. According to them, snakes descended from terrestrial lizards, aquatic lizards, or burrowing lizards. The first hypothesis, that snakes originated on land, was recently supported by a 2022 study published in Nature by Sen Li and his team. The article describes a new primitive snake fossil, Eophis, discovered in the Yishan Formation of China. This fossil dates to the early Cretaceous, approximately 125 million years ago. The second hypothesis, aquatic origin, was proposed because mosasaurs, dolichosaurs, and aegialosaurs of the Cretaceous were close relatives of snakes. These aquatic, even marine varanoids never underwent significant limb reduction. Though this hypothesis isn't the most supported, it's not entirely rejected. Fossils closely related to snakes have been found in marine fossil sites. The third and most widely accepted hypothesis is an origin from a burrowing form. It's based on the burrowing nature of primitive snakes, but also on the fact that burrowing lizards are often serpentiform. Work on snake retinas has contributed to this explanation. The skulls of snakes are reinforced. All mobility between different skull regions is lost, as are protruding elements like temporal arches. These features explain a burrowing phase, since burrowing lizards show the same modifications. However, the connection between upper jaw bones, the palate, and the skull isn't compatible with burrowing activity. Therefore, skull consolidation may be the legacy of a burrowing past. Mobility of the upper jaw and palate wasn't acquired until later. Body elongation and limb loss are adaptations linked to a burrowing lifestyle, but also to frequenting burrows and crevices where small mammals lived. The ancestors of snakes fed on these mammals. These last two hypotheses suggest that snake ancestors.
We are now in the Triassic period, just after the Great Permian extinction. The planet is empty. Approximately 90% of all terrestrial and marine life forms have disappeared forever as a consequence of the catastrophe that triggered mass extinction. Against this backdrop, the Triassic period began. Earth stretched out like a vast virgin surface waiting to be conquered. During the previous era, all continents, subjected to tectonic forces, united to form a supercontinent called Pangaea. Pangaea was surrounded by a vast ocean called Panthalassa, which contained all the seas. At the heart of Pangaea lay a paleo-ocean, completely isolated, called Tethys. In general, Pangaea was warm. No ice sheets existed to cool the planet. The coast was humidified by the ocean, while the interior remained dry. The Variscan mountain range, formed when Laurussia and Proto-Gondwana collided, influenced the supercontinent's climate. The height of the mountains blocked clouds and caused precipitation. As a result, the climate on both sides of the range was drastically different. It could be warm and humid due to cloud-driven precipitation, or warm and dry because no clouds reached that side of the Cordillera. Fauna and flora thrived best on the northern slopes of the Variscan Range. Precipitation favored vegetation development, which attracted animals. Mosses, seed plants, ferns, and lycophytes began timidly covering the planet. Despite the Permian extinction catastrophe, within a few million years, vegetation flourished again in Pangaea. As for fauna, many ecological niches were left vacant after the Permian extinction. The few surviving species conquered them. Animals had to evolve and diversify to adapt to this new environment. New species appeared in the oceans. Life returned to normal within a few thousand years. Life became abundant again. Marine reptiles took off. All this marine fauna remained essentially coastal. Only when Pangaea broke apart did they colonize the open sea. On land, survivors spread out. At the top of the food chain were archosaur reptiles. Some gave rise to archosaurs, followed by the first pterosaurs, insectivorous flying reptiles. The archosaur lineage also produced the first crocodiliforms, which gave rise to future crocodilians and then the first dinosaurs. During the Triassic, dinosaurs weren't yet the giants we know today. One of the largest and most widespread Triassic dinosaurs was Plateosaurus. The largest specimens measured about 33 feet in length. Plateosaurus had crenellated teeth. While these predators were modestly sized in the Triassic, they reached extraordinary dimensions in the Jurassic. Allosaurus, a carnivorous theropod, could measure up to 40 feet from head to tail and up to 13 feet in height. The name Allosaurus literally means strange lizard because of the protrusions on its skull. Thanks to its muscular structure, it could run at speeds between 18 and 34 miles per hour. Its robust limbs were clearly adapted for hunting. It had very powerful claws. The structure of its tail allowed it to maintain balance relative to total body weight. Although it couldn't open its mouth very wide, a muscle located at the back of the skull gave it the necessary strength to sink teeth into prey. Allosaurus was a formidable predator. A new fauna was colonizing the air. Until now, flying insects roamed the skies. Now, many reptiles joined them, discovering the advantages of this prized food source. Dimorphodon and Rhamphorhynchus were true flying predators. Dimorphodon was a flying animal with an average length of 3 feet and a wingspan of 4.75 feet. Its body structure was quite primitive, with a very small skull and short wings. The first phalanx of the wing finger was only slightly longer than the forearm. Its neck, though small, was very flexible. Its proportionally short wings relative to its body made it a poor flyer. Therefore, it flew for short periods, incapable of covering long distances. Its Parviraptor, a snake genus comprising only one species, Parviraptor estes. With 6 inches in length, it had vestigial limbs, demonstrating that it was in a transitional phase between lizards and snakes. In the seas reigned marine reptiles that appeared during the previous period. Among them were ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and pliosaurs. They were large aquatic reptiles. They had long necks and 4 flippers, allowing them to row through oceans, lakes, rivers, and swamps during the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. The term plesiosaur also includes pliosaurs. Pliosaurs have more hydrodynamic bodies, larger heads, and shorter necks. The largest pliosaurs, like Leopleurodon, were as fearsome as the great white shark. Thanks to its gustatory and visual senses, Leopleurodon located prey by swimming with its mouth open. Leopleurodon was well adapted to its environment. Its legs allowed it to move very quickly through water and travel to great depths. Its front flippers pushed water backward and allowed it to propel itself. Plesiosaurs and pliosaurs, though they had a marine lifestyle, were primarily lizards and had to surface regularly to breathe. Pliosaurs initially occupied the top of the food chain, but were supplanted by mosasaurs a little later. Ichthyosaurs were diapsid marine reptiles. They lived in the Triassic and Jurassic periods and disappeared in the early Cretaceous. They were relatively modestly sized, except for some specimens like Shonisaurus, which reached 115 feet in length. Their powerful flippers allowed them to move at speeds up to 25 miles per hour. They fed on fish, ammonites, and belemnites thanks to a long snout with sharp teeth. They had the morphology of modern dolphins and behaved like them, capable of descending to great depths and returning to the surface in a leap. Ichthyosaurs gave birth to live young ready to swim instead of eggs, an advantage for survival. Alongside these marine reptiles, cartilaginous fish developed, adopting the morphology of modern sharks. Crocodilians also emerged from archosaurs, just like dinosaurs. During the Jurassic, several dinosaur lineages appeared that survived for the next 150 million years. The most important evolution was the appearance of the first birds. The Jurassic ended. A new chapter in Earth's history began, the Cretaceous, during which snakes truly developed and diversified. And it was in this age, when titans walked the Earth, that snakes would become something the world had never seen before. Something unstoppable.
In the Cretaceous, Pangaea split into Laurasia to the north and Gondwana to the south. Laurasia also divided into two parts. The North Atlantic Ocean appeared. The southeastern part was about to open. Viewed from the sky, Earth began to look familiar. Earth still had no polar ice caps. The climate was overall warm. Sea level was about 656 feet higher than today. Flora and fauna continued evolving. Dinosaurs were the dominant group of animals with the largest sizes. They diversified. New groups appeared, while others went extinct. Among them, Tyrannosaurus rex appeared at the end of the period, better known as T-Rex. This giant measured 13 feet in height and 40 feet in length and could weigh up to 15,400 pounds. This bipedal super predator was at the top of the food chain, feeding on large herbivores. But that wasn't going to stop snakes from growing larger and larger in this highly favorable environment. Flowering plants, angiosperms, made their appearance alongside ferns and conifers. They would become dominant from the end of the period thanks to insect pollination. The vegetation was very welcoming for snakes already evolving at this stage. Their bodies were already long and sinuous. Most still had reduced limbs, like Najas rionegrina, but some had already lost them, like Dinilesia patagonica. Snakes now presented a multitude of forms, exploiting a wide variety of ecological niches. This evolution also allowed them to grow to larger sizes. Dinilesia patagonica was the first known legless snake. It lived alongside the great dinosaurs that dominated the world at that time. It lacked limbs, shoulder girdle, and pelvic girdle. This relatively large predator could reach 6.5 feet in length. The shape of its skull resembled that of Boidae and suggested it was capable of consuming large prey. Dinilesia patagonica lived in desert environments. It was a terrestrial animal. This snake is closely related to the original ancestor of the clade of crowned snakes. In-depth study of its inner ear demonstrated it was equipped for digging burrows and receiving low-frequency vibrations from the ground to detect predators and capture prey. Therefore, it wasn't prepared for aquatic life. Significant differences exist between the vestibules of terrestrial specialists that burrow, generalist terrestrial non-burrowers, and aquatic forms. The vestibule of marine snakes and lizards has reduced to almost nothing. In contrast, in burrowing species, the vestibule inflates like a balloon to improve auditory performance in subterranean environments. This trend is confirmed in all burrowing species. The vestibule of Dinilesia patagonica is large and has the same balloon shape as those of modern burrowing snakes. It's almost identical to that of Xenopelt, a type of burrowing snake from Southeast Asia that feeds on small rodents and other small snakes. Like Xenopelt, Dinilesia patagonica hunted on the surface and took refuge in soft ground. It was a carnivorous snake, feeding mainly on animal prey. Its extensible jaws and teeth were designed to grasp and ingest animal prey. Lacking limbs, Dinilesia patagonica crawled and accessed burrows and shelters of small vertebrates, like other small reptiles, small mammals, birds, and even fish. Its relatively large size allowed it to hunt large prey. Dinilesia patagonica is a genus of primitive snakes closely related to the ancestor of modern snakes. It's not one of the first lineages to separate from lizards like Najas rionegrina. Najas rionegrina is a snake with small hind limbs formed by bony elements extending from hip to ankle. Like many Cretaceous snakes, it moved easily on land thanks to its 2 legs, which it also used to cling to its mate during mating. This snake has characteristics our modern snakes no longer possesses. The bone located below the orbit has the same shape, position, and connection